Today's notes are going to be about the organization of the White House. There are going to be 7 questions you need to answer to turn in. Please make sure you're taking good and detailed notes. A lot of this is going to be on a test at some point. We're going to start with the trends in government. How has the size of the government changed over time? First off, it has gotten larger. When the government was first created, there were only 3 departments: War, Treasury, and State. Now there are 15 different departments. Because of that, it has gotten more powerful. As Congress has expanded the number of departments that there are, they have been given more money, more laws to enforce, and more programs to enact, which means they have more control over what happens in the United States of America. What we can see here is that in 2010, the office of the president and the executive branch had over 2.776 million employees. At the same time, they have 1.6 million people in the United States military. This is huge. So the real question we have to ask ourselves is, how does the president manage 4.4 million people? He's the boss. How does he make sure they're doing their jobs? How does he make sure what he wants is actually happening? How does he make sure that things are going the way he wants? The answer, though, is he's got to delegate. He has to put people he can trust. He has to put people in charge. He has to let them do their jobs. The question is how and who. So who are these people? We're going to start with the cabinet. These are the 15 major department heads who advise the president. When we see a picture of the president sitting in that big table with tons of people around him, this is usually going to be the cabinet. The inner cabinet here is the Secretary of State, who is now John Kerry, the Secretary of Treasury, who is Jack Lew, the Attorney General, Eric Holder, and the Secretary of Defense, who is now Chuck Hagel. There are many different current cabinet departments. These were the original 3, and over time we added more. Justice was added to deal with the courts, the Interior to deal with our land and our borders, Agriculture to deal with farming, Commerce, Business, Labor, Workers, Health and Human Services. This is primarily health care, and Obamacare is a part of this. Housing and Urban Development, public housing is included. Transportation, public housing, airplanes, our ports, our trains, anything that goes between a state. Transportation, energy, education, which wasn't added till 1970, so the government was not doing anything with education for a long time. Veterans Affairs after the Vietnam War, and Homeland Security, which was just recently added by Congress after the events of 9/11. We're going to watch a portion of a quick video about the presidents and their staff, and if you want to watch more, you can go to it. But we want to see what goes on in the White House, what are they doing, and how are they assisting the president.
What do we got next?
What's next?
The TV version of The West Wing has only been off the air for 3 years, and yet it's already a dated, imperfect depiction of what life is like here. It is young, it is fast, and it is loose. Eric Lesser is 24. He was in charge of baggage and logistics on the Obama campaign plane. Now he's the right-hand man to David Axelrod, senior advisor to the president.
Do we have a meeting on that today?
You have a fiscal planning meeting.
West Lobby, this is Darian.
Darian Page is 27. She was an Army sergeant in Iraq. She's now the West Wing receptionist, the first to greet every guest who arrives here.
Hey, how you doing?
Stationed closest to the power center, right outside the Oval Office, is Reggie Love, who holds the job known in politics as body man, personal aide to the president. Reggie's a former basketball and football player at Duke, and for a big man, ironically, his job is to be invisible, to shadow Obama, a job that started during the campaign. He carries the breath mints, the hand sanitizer, spending money, the Sharpies, the Blackberries, the briefing books, and remembers all the details.
I think not more cracks.
Office of the President.
Katie Johnson, KJ, is 28. She's the president's secretary.
These are shoe boxes. I'm gonna give them out to people who come into the Oval Office.
Those
So-
are lovely.
When children come in here, or when just friends of the president come in. There's big and a small. These are Fran's chocolates from Seattle, the president's favorite from the campaign trail.
KJ starts every morning the same way, typing up the president's replies to the 10 Americans whose letters are chosen at random for him to read the night before. It's his request to try to stay in touch with the public.
This is a pretty typical letter. I'm writing in regards to the bailout for the banks. I believe this would help stimulate the economy. So far, all I've seen is the banks holding on to the money or giving it to those who don't really need it.
I'm a single mother of two.
I'm a single mother of two, one of my children having a speech disability.
What will you say to that one?
Well,
Okay, if you want to watch more, you can always go back to that website. You could either search for Inside the White House on NBC or have any of these links take you right there. Now we're going to look at the executive office of the president. These are located outside of the White House itself, but they still report directly to the president. This includes the Office of Management and Budget. This is always on the test. Please take detailed notes. They prepare the budget that the president submits to Congress. They make sure to study how the executive branch operates, and they advise the president on how to reorganize and how to better spend money to get the job done that he wants to get done. And they review other departments' proposals, how they want to change, what they want to do, the things they need, the money they need. We also have Director of National Intelligence, Council of Economic Advisors, Office of Personnel Management, and Office of the U.S. Trade Representative. Again, all offices that are located outside the White House that advise the president. Now, the main thing here we need to look at is how the cabinet reacts to the staff in the White House. Staff controls access to the president, and as we saw, the secretary creates the schedule. If you're not on the schedule, you don't meet with the president. This can influence policy. As we saw, these were friends and trusted advisors from the campaign, people who had proved their loyalty to Obama before he had won office. They're often very young. As we saw, a lot of them were in their 20s, though the senior advisor is much older. And they believe they represent the president's personality and ideals. They are very close to the president. They're very loyal. And they can be fired for any sign of disloyalty. There's no rules to why they can be fired. The cabinet, on the other hand, as we saw before, they control the major federal agencies. To get their job, they've got to be more experienced politicians and bureaucrats. They're not going to be young. They're going to be older. They're not always going to be as loyal to the president. They're not always going to agree with him. So they will have arguments. Many of them were not there on the campaign. They would have their own political jobs. And as we saw with Hillary Clinton, she had run against the president. Now, to get their jobs, they need Senate approval. They can't just be hired by the president. They actually have to go to Congress and get voted on to be okay. And they may not have as much influence directly with the president, but they are running entire agencies, which means they have a lot of influence over what's actually happening. Whereas the people in the president's office are more influencing the president, not influencing the actual laws and policies. Now, because they're going to be spending more time with their departments than with the president, they will potentially support the department more than the president. So if the president wants to cut their department, they're not going to go ahead and sit by and let him do that. They're going to argue for why it should not happen. Here's your assignment for those slides. Now, on to organization of the White House. Here the significance is who is actually going to be making the decisions, and that's up to the president in the end. This is the assignment you're going to complete. We will come back to it at the end. We have the pyramid model. The description of that is the assistant's answer in a hierarchy up to the chief of staff. Sorry, my dog's playing with a new cat. Here, the president doesn't have to deal with too many people, which allows him free to deal with a lot of issues at once, but he'll be isolated from some of the decision makers. Now again, 4.4 million people, you can't always talk to everybody. The strengths here are that it's very orderly, very organized. But the weaknesses are that it could isolate the president from decisions if they don't make it all the way up the chain. And as you probably know, if you've played the game telephone, things don't always get told exactly correctly from the bottom up. As people pass information around, it can get changed. We now have the circular model. This was used by President Carter because he was a very hands-on president and he wanted to say in a lot of things. The idea here is like a wheel. The president is in the middle and lots of different people have connections to the president. These people have connections to the president, tell the president what to do. The strengths are it gives the president a lot of information, but the weaknesses are that this could cause a lot of confusion amongst the other people who are involved. And so they might not get as much done. It also usually moves slower. So while the president has a lot of say and has a lot of things going on, they may not be able to react very quickly. Hierarchy, it's fast. The president makes a decision, the people do it. Here, there's a lot more information going back and forth and back and forth. Ad hoc is kind of more random. This one is where you get a whole bunch of different groups, committees, friends, advisors, and they all deal directly with the president on a given issue. The strength here that it's flexible, and it also minimizes the amount of slowness that's going on. There's lots of ideas coming from a lot of different angles. The weakness is that the president, it's not as organized, so the president may actually get cut off from the people he really was supposed to be meeting with who are responsible for acting. And so the decisions are not always going to be getting to the people who really needed to hear them. This was used by Clinton on healthcare, and this did end in failure. That being said, flexibility has a lot of strength when it comes to dealing with issues that need a lot of information, but you also need to be acting fast. Now, just to go back to the questions here. Here they are. Here are the final questions. All right, see you guys later.